part in the gratifying and the exciting and in the luring aspects of the flesh. Just like with cookies, it's telling me, Nathan, you need to eat more. They're really good. 1 or 2 more is not going to hurt. For sin is not wanting us to have control over our lives. Rather, sin wants us to keep doing what it wants us to do, which is to rebel against God. For our sinful nature delights in rebelling against God and doing the things that allow us to enjoy the self, and then many times likes to laugh at our feeble attempts of how we try to control it through our own strength and through our own abilities and through our own discipline. In fact, even while I was preparing for this message this week, I actually had a hard time self-controlling myself on staying focused on the task at hand, which was preparing this for you all. I was constantly being pulled this way and that way by things which my mind and sin said were much more exciting, were much more beneficial for me than preparing for Sunday morning. And even when I tried to steel myself, or when I tried to exert self-mastery over those things which were more exciting, which would be more engaging, I would get something done, but then shortly thereafter I would find myself doing the things which I said I really wasn't going to do in order so I could be ready for this morning. And this is the problem where we find ourselves in too often. Thinking that we can control our sinful nature by our strength alone. For Paul says in the beginning of the verse of Romans chapter 5, verse 6, he says that we were powerless. He says we were helpless to do anything against sin. We didn't have the ability to keep our self-rule over our appetites, our desires, and everything that excites us. We were constantly losing out to our sinful nature. And sure, we can have self-control over our nature for some of the time. But when you look at what Paul and Peter are trying to tell us is self-mastery, mastery in every facet of our lives. And when we don't have that within our lives, we will ultimately lead to us failing and faltering. Because we can't truly master our sinful desires by ourselves. And so what Peter is saying, by saying that we need to add self-control to our faith, and what Paul is saying that of the fruit of self-control, that it all comes from the Holy Spirit. That is, self-control is not about the self-mastery or the reliance on self-strength. Rather, the fruit of self-control is not about our ability to go against our sinful nature by sheer desire of our own will, to avoid the things that we don't want to do, and try to do the things that we would like to see in our lives. But rather, it's all about giving the one person who has the strength, who has the ability to help us master our flesh, to help us avoid temptation and trials. For man cannot be the master of himself. For man gives in to things which are too exciting, which give us pleasure, and we find ourselves doing evil acts that float through our minds and sometimes we act upon. For in order for us to have true mastery of the self, we must understand that the level of control that we currently have cannot accomplish Rather, we need the help of one person. And that person is God. We must be connected to God. We must be willing to walk with the Holy Spirit. For us as followers of Christ, self-control can only be truly accomplished by the power of God who is working within us. That is, the only way we can truly master our desires and our passions of the flesh means that our strength has to come from a place which will never fail in times of distress. After all, when we have God on our side and we are connected with God, as Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. To have self-control, it means that our strength is not what helps gain us mastery over the desires of the flesh, nor is it our ability to self-rule. For when we are connected to God and when we are walking with the Holy Spirit, it is no longer about being able to have mastery of ourselves, rather it is about being Spirit-controlled. That is, we are giving the Spirit mastery over our lives. That we are saying that the Spirit is in control and not the self. For we are allowing Him to influence our lives. We're allowing Him to influence our choices. We are allowing Him in to the point where He is teaching us how to restrain our passions, how to properly govern ourselves better by the will of God, who is there to help us say no and to deny ourselves. And because He is helping us and because He is guiding us, the Holy Spirit is there to help us temper ourselves and to temper our faith. Because we're allowing the Holy Spirit to be the true master within us. And we're no longer allowing our sinful desires or our nature that is corrupted by sin be the master. By being Spirit-controlled, we're living a life that is a life being lived to the fullest, that is pleasing to God as He wants our lives to be. And because we have the Holy Spirit who is in control, He is able to help us understand how to use sound judgment, how to listen to God carefully, and help us understand carefully to consider what we are going to do, rather than just doing it because it seems like a really good thing to do. For instance, if it is trying not to eat too many cookies, it is easier for the Holy Spirit to say, hey, you know what? I know this is a big struggle for you, Nathan. I know